I keep seeing that moment in my head. The moment the HOA officer raised his hand. The moment my grandma fell against the railing. The sound she made. The silence that followed. The neighbors staring. Me frozen for a second that felt like a full hour. This neighborhood always looked peaceful from the outside. Perfect lawns. Perfect smiles. Perfect rules. No one knew what the HOA was hiding behind those smiles. No one knew what that officer was capable of until he touched my grandmother, until he made the worst mistake of his life. Because after that moment, everything in our quiet street changed. Everything in my family changed. I changed. And what we did after that is a reason the HOA still refuses to talk about us today. Before I tell you what happened next, there is something you need to know. Welcome back to HOA Stories. My name is Mark. I live in a quiet American suburb that never felt dangerous. I work as a contractor. I mind my business. I follow the rules. I never picked fights. I only snapped when someone hurt my grandma. If you really hate HOAs, if you think they go too far, if you know they use rules like weapons, then you got to subscribe. Join the people who fight back. Type BOO HOA in the comments. Share this story with anyone who ever dealt with an HOA nightmare. All right, here is how everything started. I remember that morning so clearly. The sun was warm. Birds were loud. Kids were riding bikes like it was the first day of summer break. My grandma was standing on the front porch. She had her small gardening gloves in one hand. She liked to fix the little flowers around the mailbox. She said the street looked nicer when everyone added color. She never talked bad about anyone. She never broke a rule. She was gentle in a way that made people feel safe. I was inside, half awake, drinking my coffee, when I heard the voice of the HOA officer at the yard gate. His name was Carter, the kind of guy who looked like he enjoyed telling people what to do. He walked around like he owned every house here. He was known for threats, fines, warnings, and words said with a fake smile. I heard him say something sharp, something like, "You already got warned." I didn't think much of it. Maybe another lawn complaint. Maybe something about a flower color not matching the guidelines. I was wrong. So wrong. I heard Grandma say, "I fixed the flowers like you told me. Why are you yelling?" I heard the officer step closer. His boots hit the concrete hard, like he wanted people to hear him, like he wanted to scare someone. I walked toward the door. Not fast enough. Not soon enough. Because the next sound I heard froze my blood. A sharp thud. A gasp. Something falling. I rushed outside, my heart punching my ribs, my hands shaking, my feet heavy like cement. And I saw Grandma on the ground, her glasses sideways, her cheek already turning red, her arm against her chest. The HOA officer stood in front of her, breathing hard, his hand halfway lifted, like he didn't expect someone to see what he did, like he messed up and knew it. For a second, my brain refused to believe it. I wanted to think she fell. I wanted to think he slipped. I wanted to think anything except the truth staring at me. My grandma was hurt. Because of him. I stepped forward, my voice low. "What did you do?" He looked at me with those cold, narrow eyes. He said, "She grabbed me first." A disgusting lie. Grandma could barely lift her groceries. There was no way she grabbed him. She whispered, "No, I didn't." Her voice shaking, her hand trembling as she touched her cheek. Every cell in my body snapped. Every bit of patience turned into fire. I moved closer. The officer backed up. He knew I wasn't scared of him. He knew he crossed a line that he couldn't hide. Neighbors opened their doors. They stepped outside. They stared. They whispered. Phones came out. People recorded. People gasped. Everyone saw the bruise forming on her face. The officer tried to walk away. I blocked his path. He said, "Touch me and you go to jail." I didn't raise my hand. I didn't push him. I didn't even need to, because my family came running out behind me. My sister, my uncle, even the kid from next door yelling. "He hit her." I saw it. The officer panicked. He tried calling someone on the radio, his voice shaking, not from guilt, but from fear of getting caught. Grandma tried to stand. She winced. Her knee looked swollen. Her cheek looked worse, the bruise spreading like spilled ink. I helped her up gently. She whispered, "I didn't do anything wrong." Her voice cracked in a way that stabbed my chest. Then she said something I'll never forget. He grabbed my arm. He shook me. Then he pushed me. I felt my throat burn. The world got sharp. Colors too bright. Sounds too loud. My sister screamed at the officer. "You put your hands on an old woman. What's wrong with you?" He kept repeating. "I didn't touch her. I didn't touch her. I didn't touch her." He said it so much it sounded like he was trying to convince himself. More neighbors gathered. Some angry. Some scared. Some recording. Some calling the police. I looked at every face. I saw disbelief. Shock. Rage. Sympathy. Then I stared straight at the officer. And I said the words that changed everything that came after. "You picked the wrong family." He swallowed, his hand on his belt, his radio shaking slightly. He said, "You people always exaggerate. The HOA will back me up. No one will take your side. I follow the rules here. I'm the rules here." That final sentence, that last bit of arrogance, made something dark settle in my chest. I took Grandma inside. I sat her on the couch, my hands still shaking, my mom rushing to bring ice, my sister pacing back and forth, my uncle cursing under his breath. I kept hearing Grandma's soft voice, her trembling, her confusion, her pain. She kept saying, "Why did he do that? Why did he get so angry over flowers?" I didn't know. I didn't care. I only cared about making him pay. Every part of me wanted justice. Real justice, not the fake HOA kind. My family rallied like a storm. My uncle grabbed his laptop. My sister called neighbors for statements. My mom checked every bruise carefully. I took pictures. I recorded videos. I documented every injury, every mark, every detail. This wasn't going to be hidden. This wasn't going to be ignored. Because if an HOA officer could hurt someone like her, an old woman, a gentle soul, a person who never hurt anyone, then what else were they doing behind closed doors? What else had this neighborhood been blind to? I looked at Grandma, her cheek dark purple, her eyes watering, her hands shaking, her voice small, and I felt something awaken inside me. Something that wasn't going to stop, something that wasn't going to forgive. I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't ending here. This wasn't going away. This wasn't a warning. This was war. So here is what I want to ask you. If this was your grandma, what would you do next? I sat there next to Grandma, watching her breathe slow, watching her lean back on the couch with that ice pack pressed to her cheek. The bruise was darker now, like the skin itself was remembering what happened, like her body wanted to shout even if her voice stayed soft. My anger was running wild in my chest, but my grandma just looked tired, not scared, not dramatic, just tired, like she had seen people like the HOA officer before, and she expected him to be cruel. She whispered, "You don't need to make trouble for me. Let it go. Let it go." Like what happened was just a small mistake. Like she was supposed to be quiet. Like old people should accept being pushed around. I shook my head. "I'm not letting anything go, not this time." She didn't argue. She knew I meant it. My sister came back inside, her face red, her hands shaking from adrenaline. She said, "Every neighbor is talking about it. Everyone saw something. This is not going away." My uncle sat down at the table, typing fast on his laptop. Screens open, documents spread. He had that look like he was preparing for a court case. Except this wasn't a court. This was our house, our wounded grandma, our fury. He said, "We are doing this step by step, clean and quick. No mistakes." My mom brought a small tray. Tea for Grandma. Something warm to calm her down. Because that is what moms do. They fight with comfort first. I stepped back outside to breathe, to calm my burning head. The street was loud. More neighbors were still out. Some whispering, some angry, some acting like they saw something they never wanted to see. Then I saw him again. The HOA officer, Carter, walking fast toward his vehicle, talking on his radio like he was the victim, like he was the one who needed help, like he didn't shove an old woman down on her own porch. I walked toward him, slow, controlled, my fist tight, not to hit him, but to stop myself from hitting him. He saw me and stiffened. He said, "You need to step away. You are escalating this." Escalating. That word snapped something in my brain. He escalated all of this the second he touched her. He started all of this. He caused all of this. I kept my voice low. What you did is on camera. He flinched. Barely. But enough. He said, you think anyone will take your side? I am with the HOA. I write the reports. I decide what gets mentioned. My word is official. Official. He said it like it was a shield. Like he thought we were powerless. Like he believed his badge meant he couldn't fall. He didn't know my family. He didn't know our patience had limits. He didn't know this street was about to turn on him. He closed the door of his vehicle. But before he drove off, he gave me a look. Cold. Flat. Filled with some mix of fear and arrogance. Then he sped away. I stood there, teeth tight, breathing heavy, trying to think before I acted, trying not to burn the whole neighborhood down in one move. I walked back inside. Grandma was sipping tea. My sister was pacing. My uncle typing. My mom rubbing Grandma's back slowly. I sat on the armchair and said, we are taking this up with the police. My uncle nodded. Already calling. Grandma's hand tightened on mine. She didn't ask us to stop this time. She just said, be careful, people like him get away because they lie better than they live. That hit deep. Because she was right. People like him didn't feel guilt. They felt entitlement. My sister leaned forward. Her voice sharp. This is not just about Grandma. This is about everyone he bullied on this street. Neighbors came to the door. One by one. Some with videos. Some with statements. Some saying, your grandma did nothing. He snapped first. We gathered everything. Every angle. Every witness. Every detail. The police finally arrived. 2 officers. Steady. Professional. Curious. One spoke gently to Grandma. Asked if she was okay. Asked if she needed an ambulance. She said she was fine. Just shaken. Just hurting. Just confused why a uniform gave someone the right to shove her. They took pictures. They asked questions. They listened more than they talked. Then the moment came. The one we needed. One officer whispered to the other, and the second officer nodded. And the first one walked up to me and said, this isn't a civil HOA matter. This is assault on a senior citizen. My chest felt tight, not from fear, but from relief. Someone finally called it what it was. They asked if I had the videos. I showed them. The neighbors showed them. Everyone showed them. You could see him, his hand on her arm, his voice raised, her stepping back, his shove, her hitting the railing, her collapsing. The officers' faces changed. They weren't neutral anymore. They were angry. One said, we will be contacting him today. But I knew something they didn't. The HOA would try to protect him. They would lie. They would twist. They would do whatever it took to make this go away. Because if he went down, they went down with him. And HOAs never like being wrong. The rest of the day felt long. Heavy. Like time slowed down to match Grandma's breathing. That night, my sister sat on the couch with Grandma, telling her funny stories, trying to make her smile. My uncle kept printing documents. My mom kept checking on everyone. I stood by the window, watching the neighborhood, watching the quiet, watching the house of the HOA president across the street. Her lights were still on, her curtains slightly open, her silhouette pacing inside, talking on the phone, probably planning something, probably trying to clean up the mess, probably trying to protect their officer. My phone buzzed. A message from a neighbor. It said, they are meeting tonight. They're trying to change the report before it goes to the police. I clenched my jaw. Of course they were. The HOA didn't follow rules. They wrote their own. I looked at Grandma, sleeping lightly, breathing slow, her cheek bruised, her skin fragile, her body tired, and I felt that storm rise inside me again. The quiet part of me, the patient part of me, the reasonable part of me, all of it fell away. This wasn't going to be a simple complaint. This wasn't going to be a meeting. This wasn't going to be a soft conversation. This was going to be a fight. A real one. A loud one. A public one. Because they messed with someone they shouldn't have touched. And now, we were going to expose everything they tried to hide. I walked to the table, sat down, opened my phone, and started writing something I never thought I would ever have to write. A full statement. A full report. A full breakdown of what their officer did. And what the HOA tried to cover up. I wasn't scared of them. Not anymore. I wasn't intimidated by their rules. Their fines. Their warnings. None of it. They crossed the line. And now they had to face the consequences. I typed for an hour. My hands steady, my mind sharp, my heart burning. Then I looked up at my family and said, "They want to fight in the shadows. We will fight in the open." My sister nodded. My uncle smirked. My mom whispered, "Then let them come." But something inside me was whispering too. A question that kept looping in my head. A question that wouldn't leave. A question that now I want to ask you. If your HOA tried to hide the truth, would you expose them publicly or would you take them down quietly? I woke up that morning with the taste of metal in my mouth and the memory of my grandma's scream burned into my head. I could still see the officer's hand swinging and the dull thunk when it hit her shoulder. Her skin had broken a little where he grabbed her. Small white scars already forming around the bruise like a map of the lie he told himself. I sat on the edge of my bed and tried to breathe slow, like my dad taught me when things got too loud. My phone kept buzzing on the table, messages and voices and people saying what I already knew. The neighbor girls are blowing up my chat. "Did you see it? Did you call 911? Are you okay?" I wasn't okay, but I had to move and move fast. We dressed quiet, like soldiers getting ready for something we didn't know how to name. Grandma wrapped her arm with a scarf, even though the wound looked worse than she let on. She smiled with that old brave smile and told me to stop fretting. I kissed her cheek and felt the ridge of a new scar under my lips. It made me sick and made me mad all at once. We went back to the house where it happened, the driveway where the officer had shoved his weight like he owned our life. The yard smelled like cut grass and guilt, like normal suburb life with a rotten core. People were standing in small circles whispering. Some had phones out filming like vultures. Some looked away like they'd seen too much already. The HOA board had pulled enough strings to make things messy, but the officer thought he was untouchable. I thought of the videos I had on my phone, shaky close-ups of her face as she tried to walk away, the smear on her sleeve where he hit her. This was the proof, and proof is a dangerous thing for the guilty. We went to the ER first because Grandma insisted and because a rule is a rule if you want to live with your conscience. The nurse looked at the bruise and frowned with that soft concern people show when they know life is unfair. They took x-rays and said nothing but wrote everything down. The doc asked if it was an accident, and I wanted to say no with my whole chest. But we said the words that keep the record straight. The officer struck her. It was not an accident. And they put it in the file. Grandma let them touch her and check her in a way that made me want to protect her from everyone. Back home, the neighborhood was quiet like before a storm. People kept their curtains closed as if hiding could pretend this never happened. I sat at the kitchen table and scrolled through the messages again. Footage, angles, the exact moment the officer's grip tightened. My hands shook when I watched it on repeat. Not because of fear, but because seeing it made me feel alive in a weird way, like truth was finally on our side. We posted the clip later that day, just a short part. Nothing fancy, the impact must speak for itself. Within hours, the comments started flooding in, calls for justice, people saying they had horror stories too, and some ugly ones from folks who sided with the badge no matter what. I ignored the ugly ones and read every message from the ones who knew what it felt like to be stepped on. My brother called, and his voice was a low engine, calm but ready to blow. He said he knew a lawyer who owed him a favor. He said we shouldn't go soft on this, that the officer needed to know hitting old ladies ended careers in open jail cells. I liked the sound of that. I liked the sound of consequence knocking on a door no one believed could open. We gathered evidence like kids collecting marbles, the video, witness contacts, medical records, even a neighbor's doorbell cam that got the rear angle. Every piece fit together like a slow-burning fuse. But the HOA had friends, board members with long nails in the town council, and thick wallets to match. They started sending letters the way snakes slither letters into mailboxes, warnings about defamation, threats to sue if we posted more clips, notices about disturbing the peace. It made me laugh and then made my stomach go cold. They thought rules and letters could scrub reality clean like bleach. They thought a file could outweigh a video of a hand hitting a frail shoulder. It was arrogant and old world and stupid. We kept pushing, though, because sitting still felt like death. The local news called after someone sent them the clip anonymously. that made things smell like gasoline and matches. Within 24 hours, someone from the HOA called our house, pretending to be worried. They said they wanted to mediate and bring unity back to the street. Their phones ring, and their voices smell like vinegar. They said the usual things about reputation and community standards. I prayed I could keep my voice even when I answered. I told them we wanted answers, not peace. They didn't like that at all. The anger in the comments turned into action fast. People from the next block and the block overgathered in the park like they were waiting for a preacher to start a revival. There were signs, handmade and fierce. Justice for Grandma. HOA equals hands off America. A couple of moms held kids like shields and looked ready to fight with words. I stood there and felt like a slug in the middle of a stampede, heart beating fast but strangely calm too. This is the thing about community power. It looks messy, but it hits the guilty where it hurts most in the eyes of everyone who sees. The officer kept his job for the moment, because power delays consequences like a bad hangover. But his name was in the paper and his face was on social media. He had the kind of shame that is slow and corrosive. I watched his social channels get flooded with replies that called him out. Some were kind and tragic. Others were sharp and merciless. It was not pretty to watch him try to explain, but it was a sight to see his defenders shrink under the heat of witnesses and video. That gave me a strange comfort, a sense of balance returning like tide to shore. Grandma got calls from distant cousins and old high school friends who hadn't spoken to her in years. They sent flowers and stories and things that made her laugh like she did when she was young. She loved the attention and hated the reason for it. She told me she never wanted to be a hero, but she would wear the title like a cracked crown if it meant no other old lady got hit for answering the door. She showed me where the officer had grabbed her arm, and I could see the tiny ridges of skin trying to knit back together. Scars like punctuation marks on a bad sentence. We started making plans. Legal steps first, then public pressure, then the slow work of changing rules that let people like this officer think they could do anything. My friends set up a fundraiser to pay for legal fees. Strangers sent money and messages and told us they used to be afraid too. It was humbling and powerful and reminded me that even in a quiet town, the loudest thing is the truth when it comes out right. At night, I walked the block and looked at the houses with lights on and curtains down, people whispering into phones and making choices on how to stand up. I thought about all the small things that stack into big things, a late lawnmower complaint, a letter about a mailbox height, and then a shove that breaks a life. I thought about how petty rules give people permission to be cruel. I thought about how we could use the system to smash the system back. There's a kind of sick poetry in it that made me smile like a madman. We decided to hold a public meeting at the community center, bring witnesses, bring the video on a big screen, ask the HOA to answer in front of everyone. They sent a lawyer instead, the kind that smells of old money and older lies. But the room was packed with people who had seen the clip and felt something light a fire in their belly. We showed the footage and watched the room change like a slow sunrise, heads shaking, mouths open, anger rising like a wave. In that moment, I felt something fierce and simple. This wasn't just about one officer or one bruise on my grandma's arm. This was about the way small cruelties add up until they feel normal, about the thin line between law and lawlessness when people hide behind badges and titles. This was about making sure the old ladies who bake for neighborhood potlucks don't get pushed aside like they belong to the past. We wanted to send a message that hands raised in anger meant consequences landed on the guilty. And the most satisfying thing was watching the officer's defense crack under the weight of witness names and a video that didn't lie. When the HOA lawyer stammered, I felt like punching the air, and then I caught myself. Grandma squeezed my hand under the bench and looked at me like she always has, like I was her boy and she was my anchor. She winked like a veteran of battles I never saw and told me to breathe. So I breathed in the room that smelled like old coffee and new justice and decided we would not stop. Now tell me what you would do if your neighbor's badge hit your grandma and the HOA tried to bury it. Would you sit quiet or stand loud? And why do you think people still let tiny rules become big crimes? I didn't sleep that night, not even a little. My brain kept replaying the meeting at the community center. The faces, the gasps, the way people looked at the video like they were waking up from a long nap. A kind of silent rebellion was spreading through the neighborhood. Slow at first, then heavy, then loud. I sat at the dining table with my laptop glowing in the dark. Grandma slept on the couch again because she said the bed made her bruises hurt. My sister was on a chair next to her with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. My uncle snored in the recliner with his laptop half open, like we were a weird war room family, waiting for a signal, waiting for something to break. At 3 in the morning, my phone buzzed. A message from a number I didn't recognize. It said, "I need to talk to you. I saw something, but I don't want to say it in public. Meet me behind the pool fence at 9 a.m. No name, no details, just fear disguised as bravery." I stared at it for a long time. My sister leaned over my shoulder and whispered, "You think it's a trap?" I didn't know, but I wasn't scared. Anger has a way of replacing fear with something sharp and stupid. I wrote back, "I'll be there." We finally slept at around 5. Not real sleep, just that heavy collapse your body does when your brain refuses to shut up. Morning came with bright light and buzzing anxiety. Grandma winced when she woke up. The bruise on her cheek almost black now, her arm showing new purple marks. The small scar near her temple looked cleaner, but still angry. I put the ice pack back gently. She held my hand and said, "You look tired. Don't break yourself trying to fix the world." I kissed her forehead. "I'm not fixing the world. I'm fixing this street. One jerk at a time." She smiled, the kind of smile that hides worry behind love. At 9 a.m., I walked to the pool area. The street was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like everyone's watching from behind curtains. The HOA office was closed, which was strange. They never closed on Thursdays. Something was happening, and they didn't want us to see it. At the back of the pool fence, a tall guy in a gray hoodie waited, hands deep in pockets, head down, like he didn't want the sunlight to know his name. He glanced up when he saw me, his eyes tired, his voice low. "You're Mark." "Yeah, you." "Name's Jordan. I live on Oakview, 2 houses from your grandma." I saw what happened. My chest tightened. "You recorded it?" He shook his head. "No, but I saw something that matters. Something no one is talking about." I stepped closer. He looked around nervously like the bushes might have microphones. He whispered, "That officer, Carter, he has done this before. Not to an old lady, but to 2 teens last year. He pushed them, threatened them, said he'd teach them discipline. Their parents didn't report it because the HOA paid them off." Paid them off. The words rolled in my head like gravel. I felt my jaw tighten. "How do you know?" He pulled out his phone, showed me a screenshot of a message, an email from an HOA board member to a family, offering settlement money for unfortunate misunderstanding. I read it twice, my heart pounding harder each time. Jordan swallowed. I didn't say anything because the HOA scares people. They have cameras everywhere. They track cars. They send letters that can ruin your week. But after what he did to your grandma, his voice broke. He rubbed his eyes. "I can't keep quiet. I'm a teacher. I have a mother too. Someone like him shouldn't have power." I stared at him. I saw guilt, fear, and finally courage. Slow, shaking, but real. I put my hand on his shoulder. "Thank you. This helps more than you know." He nodded and walked away fast, like he was escaping a crime scene. I rushed home, my brain racing. When I showed the email to my uncle, his mouth fell open. "This is evidence. This is actual bribery. They're done. Completely done." But things got weirder, because around noon, the HOA president herself knocked on our door. We looked at each other. My mom opened the door. The president stood there with her fake polite face. Hair perfect, lipstick sharp. A woman who believed she ran the world from her living room. She held a white envelope. "My condolences to your mother. Terrible incident. We would like to resolve this without causing unnecessary neighborhood tension." Resolve. That word made my blood heat. My uncle stepped forward. "What's in the envelope?" She swallowed. "Financial assistance and a written apology from the officer if you withdraw complaints and delete the video online. A bribe, a cheap one, wrapped in fake concern." My mother took the envelope, opened it, Laughed. Actually laughed. It was like 40 crisp $100 bills. Barely enough to buy a lawnmower. My mom's voice was ice. You think you can buy silence with this pocket change? My mother was assaulted, not inconvenienced. The HOA president stiffened, her smile cracking. She said, "It would be unfortunate for your family if this got blown out of proportion." My sister stepped forward. "Oh, so now you're threatening us?" The president didn't answer. She turned, walked fast to her SUV, and slammed the door so hard the mirror rattled. I looked at my mom, my sister, my uncle. We all felt it. This wasn't just a case now. This was a war full of cracks, and the HOA was desperately trying to stop the leak. We gathered everything. The videos, the witness names, the medical report, the screenshots from Jordan, the envelope, the apology letter they tried to sneak in. We sent all of it to the police, all of it to the lawyer, all of it to the news station, and all of it to every neighbor who supported us. By evening, the street was buzzing. People talking, doors opening, whispers turning into arguments. Some defending the HOA, some wanting the officer arrested, some scared, some relieved someone finally stepped up. Then something unexpected happened. The officer himself showed up, walking down the street in plain clothes. His face red, his eyes bloodshot. He stopped at our driveway, hands shaking, breathing like he had been running. He said, "We need to talk. Please." My uncle stood by my side. My sister stood on the porch. Grandma watched from the living room, a blanket over her knees, eyes steady like a judge waiting for the accused to finish lying. I crossed my arms. "What do you want?" He rubbed his face, looked down, then looked up at me with something almost human. Fear, regret, shame, desperation, or maybe all four. I didn't mean to push her. I lost control. I panicked. I didn't think she'd fall that hard. I messed up. Okay, I messed up bad. My sister stepped closer. "You hit an old woman. What kind of human loses control like that?" His voice cracked. "I'm gonna lose my job, my house, everything. Please, just tell the police we can settle this. We can fix this. Please." He looked broken, but broken doesn't erase bruises. Broken doesn't erase pain. Broken doesn't erase the scar on her face. I stared at him, cold, steady, not yelling, not shaking. I said, "You should have thought about all that before you touched her." His mouth trembled. He stepped back, and for the first time, I think he understood he wasn't in control anymore. Not of the narrative, not of the neighborhood, not of us. He turned around, walked away slow, like a man walking toward the end of something he thought would last forever. When he disappeared around the corner, I felt something heavy lift from my chest. Not relief, not victory, just clarity. We were in the middle of something big, and we were not backing down. Now here is what I want to ask you. If the man who hurt your grandmother begged for mercy, would you forgive him or finish the fight? I wake up with the taste of iron in my mouth. The house feels colder than usual, like the walls remember what happened and are holding their breath. I sit on the edge of the couch and watch my hands. They're shaking, small tremors that won't stop. My phone buzzes on the table. Unknown number. I don't answer right away. I already know who calls after something like this. Outside, the street is quiet. The same manicured lawns, the same mailbox flags standing like tiny accusations. I walk to the kitchen slowly. Every step feels heavy, like I'm walking through syrup. Grandma is at the table. Her hand is wrapped in a towel that has dried blood at one corner. There are bruises blooming under the skin of her forearm and little red streaks on her cheek. The dog sits close to her feet, watching me with worried eyes. I kneel, and she smiles the way she always smiles, weak but real. She tries to brush the towel away from her hand, but winces. I tell her to not move, to breathe slow. She nods and looks at me with a fire that surprises me. Her eyes say, "Don't be the one to cry now." I remember the HOA officer's face that night, the smirk that never left his mouth, the way he reached out like he owned the world. He hit her in front of us, like it was nothing, like she was just another rule to enforce. He didn't expect us to stand up. He thought fear would finish the story. Now, that fear has a different sound. It is like a low drum in my chest, and it keeps building, We call the police line that listens but doesn't move fast. We make a statement. I watch Grandma speak to the detective as if she is telling the truth to a stranger who might become a friend. She says his name out loud, and I hear the way she measures each syllable. It chills me, because she knows what names can do when they reach the right ears. Rumors start to crawl through the cul-de-sac like ants. Some neighbors whisper outside their hedges. Others pretend nothing happened and wave at us like nothing changed. The HOA email arrives that same morning. It reads like a legal document and like a taunt. They list neighborhood conduct concerns and remind everyone about community standards. I print it and crumple it. Grandma looks at the paper and laughs. A dry little laugh that sounds like breaking glass. She tells me a story while I make tea. She says when she was younger, she fought for people who had no voice. She says you don't give up when the rules are dumb. You bend them until they break. She pats my shoulder and calls me stubborn. I tell her I learned it from her, and we both smile without saying more. We decide to fight the damage properly, not just with words, not just with police reports. We want proof. We want the world to see the marks he left on our body and on our home. I take pictures of the bruises, close shots, clear shots. Lighting matters, so I set up lamps to make the marks undeniable. Grandma sits like an actor staging a comeback. She lets me photograph every angle without flinching, proud in a way that makes my chest ache. The next day, the HOA sent a representative to discuss neighborly concerns. It is the same officer. He smiles the fake smile used by men who think a polite face can hide anything. I answer the door and stand with Grandma behind me. Her cane taps the tile, and I realize how much we already expect of her, how much she will still give. He starts with small talk, asking about lawn care, about which vendor we use for our hedges. I refuse to be distracted. I ask him about the incident calmly. There is a pause long enough to hear the mail slot click behind us. He says it never happened. He says there are no witnesses who actually saw him strike anyone. He uses phrases like misunderstanding and private dispute. His voice is smooth, practiced. I show him the photos on my phone. He glances, then looks away too quickly. His brow tightens for the first time. He asks if the photos are edited. I say no, and slide them to the detective who has finally shown up after our call. The detective's face goes quiet as he scrolls. I notice the officer's hands twitch, like a predator realizing the prey might bite back. The HOA starts a campaign online to defend its officer. A carefully worded post about community safety and concerns about fraud. They use polite words to smear us. Neighbors who supported us are suddenly quiet. The message spreads like rotten fruit. People take a bite and then hand it on. I feel the anger spike hot and sharp. It compels me to act in ways I would not usually choose. We set a plan, not violent. We promised Grandma we would not become what we fight, but smart and public. We gather the medical records, the photos, the witness statements. We collect the names of people who heard him yelling, who saw him push past us, who remembered the K-9 barking in the night. We go to the local news station with a folder heavy with truth. The producer listens with a face that changes like weather. She asks for more proof, says she can't run a story on accusations alone. I hand her the video from the front door camera that recorded the officer's arrival. Her fingers tremble when she sees the footage. She says she'll check it out and call back. Meanwhile, the HOA hits back with a notice of trespassing and threats of fines if we engage in public defamation. Their lawyer uses words like libel and reputation. It feels like they're trying to drown us in paper until we cannot breathe. I take a breath and name the emotion out loud, fear and fury together. I can't let them bury the truth in legal chase. We organize the neighbors who have had issues with the HOA before. There are more than we thought. The quiet corners of the community hold stories of petty fines, threats, and an officer who liked the sound of his own authority. We meet in a basement with coffee and low light. It feels like plotting, but really it is strategy and solidarity. We trade stories and proof, and it becomes clear we are not alone. Suddenly we have a list of names and dates and emails. It is long enough to be scary for the HOA. The story grows into something bigger than us. People start to talk to the news station. The producer calls back with a day and time. I think of Grandma sitting in that interview chair wearing her cardigan and bruises like medals. I imagine her voice cutting through the canned statements of the HOA. It makes me feel both terrified and resolute. On the morning of the interview, the officer appears near the studio. He stands in a circle of supporters like a king without a crown. He looks out at the cameras with a practiced confidence. I walk into the studio and sit across from him. It is the strangest kind of battlefield. Lights instead of sunshine, microphones instead of yelling. I see his jaw tighten as the host plays our front door footage on screen. The footage shows him approaching the door, the shove, the testy gestures the moment he raised his hand. There is no denying it in that glow of pixels. He denies it still, at first. He tries to frame it as a misinterpreted action. The host pushes back with our photos and a neighbor's recording. People in the live chat start to post angry messages. I can feel the momentum shifting like wind. Grandma speaks with a voice that has been used to telling stories her whole life. She doesn't cry. She doesn't beg. She says what happened, slow and measured and true. The host leans forward and asks the hard question about why he thought he could hit an elderly woman. The officer falters. His words stumble like a man caught without his script. It is the first crack in his armor, and cracks spread faster than steel. After the interview, comments explode. The station runs the story on the evening news and posts it online. People share, tag, and comment. Neighbors who were silent reach out with apologies and new testimonies. The HOA board files a weak reply that looks small next to the storm of public opinion. But this is not the end. We know systems like this dig in and try to survive. We expect counter moves, legal tricks, and maybe smear campaigns designed to confuse. So we prepare. We share the story with legal aid groups and an advocacy organization that helps the elderly and fights abuse. We file a formal complaint and request the officer be suspended pending investigation. We wait and watch as the town finally begins to ask the questions we asked the night that changed us. At home, Grandma rests and I sit beside her. Her shoulder is warm under my hand. We want a public hearing, but not yet justice. I think about the officer walking our streets. I think about what it will take to make the change last. I feel tired and strangely proud. This fight has made enemies and allies in the same breath. I look at Grandma's bruised wrist and remember the exact way she held her head when he struck her. It is a memory burned into me like a stamp. But there is also another memory. Her hand pressing my cheek when I couldn't sleep. Her laughter when she beat the neighborhood chess champion at 80 years old. Those memories anchor me to the person she is beyond the wounds. We keep pushing. We file. We speak. We make noise until the right ears hear us. We show the scars not for pity, but for proof that something rotten was allowed to hide behind a badge. And as the story runs, as the neighborhood watches, I think about what it means to turn the tables. Not with violence, but with truth, with solidarity, with the stubbornness of people who love their own. I wonder if that's enough to change a system that protects itself first. Did you ever see someone in your neighborhood stand up and change the rules? And what did you do when you saw it happen? I could feel the tension in the air. It was thick, heavy, like the calm before a storm. My grandma sat in her favorite chair, still nursing the bruises from the last encounter. The scars on her arms a silent reminder of what that HOA officer had done. I had promised myself, and her, that this time it would end differently, and I wasn't going to let them get away with it. The sun was setting, painting the neighborhood in shades of orange and red, almost like it knew something dramatic was about to unfold. I had spent hours reviewing every rule, every regulation the HOA had tried to use against us, and I had a plan. A perfect plan. I walked up to the main gate, where the officer usually lounged, flexing his authority like a king in his tiny kingdom. But today I had the upper hand. My hands shook a little, not from fear, but from adrenaline, from the anticipation of justice. "You think you can bully my family?" I said, my voice steady but filled with anger. "Not anymore." He looked at me, that smug grin still on his face, the kind that made me want to punch him on the spot, but I held back. I had to be smart. I had to be clever. I pulled out my phone, recording everything, every word, every motion, every hint of aggression. The HOA officer's eyes widened when he noticed, but it was too late. I had all the evidence I needed. "You hit an elderly woman, my grandma, and you think this is acceptable?" I said, stepping closer, my voice echoing across the quiet street. "Do you know what happens when the community finds out what kind of man you really are?" He tried to laugh it off, but it sounded hollow, weak, fake. I could see the sweat forming on his forehead, the nervous twitch in his hand. And that's when I knew I had him. I called over a few neighbors, people who had also suffered under his petty rules, who had felt the sting of unfair fines, the humiliation of petty HOA politics, and they came running. One by one, they joined us, standing with me, standing for my grandma, standing against the tyranny of this tiny man with a badge. The officer looked around, suddenly realizing he was outnumbered, exposed, vulnerable. He tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. He was no longer in control. My grandma stood up, her voice surprisingly strong, cutting through the tension like a blade. "You will not touch me or any of my family ever again." And at that moment, I felt something change, a shift. The air felt lighter, like the entire street had taken a deep breath together, relief mixed with triumph. We documented everything, shared the evidence online. Within hours, the story had spread across the community. The HOA board had no choice but to take action, and the officer was suspended pending investigation. It wasn't just justice, it was vindication for my grandma, for my family, and for everyone who had ever been bullied by a HOA officer thinking their power was untouchable. And as we watched him leave, his face pale, his pride in ruins, I turned to my grandma, hugged her tightly, and whispered, "We did it together." The scars on our arms would heal, the memory of the pain would linger, but so would the memory of victory, the knowledge that even the smallest and oldest among us could stand up and make a difference. Now, I need to ask you something. Have you ever faced someone in power who thought they could push you around, and did you stand up or let them win? Comment below. I want to hear your story, and let's see who really knows how to fight back. Have you ever faced a bully in power like this HOA officer? Comment BOO HOA if you've ever stood up against them, or share your story of revenge. The tension in the neighborhood was electric. You could feel it in every corner, every yard, every whisper. The HOA officer had been humiliated, his smugness shattered, but I knew deep down he wasn't done yet. He would try something, one last desperate move, and I had to be ready. That evening, the sky turned a deep, threatening gray, like the world itself was aware of the showdown about to happen. I checked on my grandma. She was resting, still bruised, still scarred, but her eyes sparkled with determination. She was ready to face the final chapter, and so was I. I called a neighborhood meeting, invited everyone who had suffered under the HOA's ridiculous rules, everyone who had felt powerless, and everyone who had secretly wanted to fight back. By the time the officer arrived, we had a small army, not violent, not aggressive, just people armed with truth, courage, and the evidence we had gathered. He strutted in, trying to act like he owned the place, like the law was on his side. But when he saw all of us standing tall, staring him down, his confident facade cracked. "You think this ends here?" He sneered, tried to intimidate, tried to regain control. I stepped forward, holding the pile of reports, photos, and videos. Every action, every bruise, every lie documented, every bit of his abuse exposed. "No, this ends the way it should, with truth, with justice, and with you facing the consequences of your actions." He flinched, his face pale, his hands trembling. I could see the fear now, the same fear my grandma had felt when he hit her, the same fear everyone in our neighborhood had felt under his power. The community began to speak, sharing their stories, their own encounters with him, their own fights against petty fines, threats, and intimidation. Every word was a nail in the coffin of his authority. Every story a reminder that he was no longer untouchable. Then my grandma stood up, walking slowly to the front, her eyes locked on his every scar, every mark on her arms a testimony, a reminder of what he had done. You thought you could break us, bully us, silence us, but we are stronger than you ever imagined. And this is where your reign ends. He tried to argue, to justify, but no one listened. The room was full of people who had seen through his lies, who had felt his cruelty firsthand, and now he had nowhere to hide. Within hours, the HOA board had no choice but to take action. The officer was officially removed, suspended indefinitely, and investigations began into his abuse of power. The neighborhood breathed a collective sigh of relief. The streets felt lighter, freer, as if the very air had been cleansed of his tyranny. We celebrated quietly, in our own way, proud that justice had been served. My grandma smiled, finally able to move without fear, her scars a symbol of her strength, her resilience. And as I looked around at everyone who had joined us, friends, neighbors, strangers, I realized we had done more than win a fight. We had reclaimed our community, our sense of safety, our dignity. But more than that, we had sent a message to anyone who thought they could abuse their power, anyone who thought the small and the quiet could be ignored. We had proven that courage, unity, and persistence can defeat even the strongest bully. And as I hugged my grandma one last time, I knew this story would be remembered, not for the fear we endured, but for the victory we achieved together and the lesson it taught us all. Now, it's your turn to reflect. Have you ever faced someone abusing their power and found the courage to stand up, or are you still holding back? Share your story below and let the world know no bully can win if we stand together. Have you ever had to fight someone abusing their power? Comment BOOO HOA if you've ever stood up, or tell us your story of taking back your power.